You want to record? Yeah, you do want to record today? You got a lot to say, a lot on your little mind. You want to do a sound check real quick? Hey, you did the sound check. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Let's get unbothered.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Rivera. I'm your host, Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. And in case you guys didn't notice, that is my little bear, who's my co-host. A couple weeks ago, I thought she was going to quit, and then all of a sudden, she's found this vigor, this new found appreciation for being able to get unbothered, and she does the sound check and she gives me kisses. And you see, I don't have to threaten her to give me kisses, because sometimes I do have to be like, okay, you're gonna have to give me a kiss or else I'm not gonna give you TREATS. And then she'll be like, okay, let me straighten up. But you notice I haven't had to do any of that. And I have some important stuff that I want to talk about today. I'm sorry for not being around last week. I went to see Ben Bankus, and it was a really good show. And my friend Hank was on it, and I got to see Hank, and that was really great. Jamar Neighbors was there, and that was just a special surprise, to me, special surprise. But, I guess he's been working with Ben a bit. And Ben Bankus is a lot of fun, and we got to chat for a little bit after, and that was cool. It was all the way around a good situation, but I want to talk to you guys about other stuff this week. Like I said, the main point of me even bringing that up is just to say I'm sorry to you guys. I do try to be here every week, and I'll try to keep that as minimal as possible, like me not being around, even though in the future I'm sure it'll happen at some point again, but it won't be frequent, and it won't be soon that it happens again, because then that would be frequent. Okay. What you guys have to know about me, if you haven't already figured it out, is I am an extremely obnoxious person. I'm practically a Muppet. And the people that know me, love me, hang out with me, they just accept it for what it is. I'm always going to be silly. Like, I always do that. Like, just to be obnoxious. And it ties in with what I want to get at, though, because I'm going to title this one something like a letter to my best friend or a message to my best friend, something like that. Which I know some people might take issue with the fact that I'm making a podcast rather than talking to my best friend. If you don't know, I have a best friend in New Jersey. I call her the East Coast Bestie. I don't usually mention even her first name, but when you hear the intro at the beginning of Unbothered, that's actually her and her mother, and they were having this conversation way back, when I first started Unbothered. So like 2015 or 2016 was when they were having this conversation. And she sent it to me just because, her mom's always been super cool with me. And so when she sent it to me, I put the other part on it, which a friend of mine who I think he works for Gabriel Iglesias and Joe Coy, their production company, or their, I don't know if it's a management, what it is, but it's Arson House is the name of it. If he's still working at the same place. I haven't talked to him in quite a bit, but it's not like we didn't have a falling out or anything. Just he's one of those friends, and I have a lot of these, that are super cool with me and super helpful with me. And if I ever need any technical advice, because he actually went to school for editing and all that stuff. And so if I ever need technical advice, or I never ever need help with anything, he's one of the friends that I can easily reach out to, and he'll actually be there for me. And I do have a lot of friends that are like that I don't talk to regularly, because I know I've mentioned this before, but I don't think people understand the full scope of it. It's really hard for me to talk to anybody regularly because I don't like being on the phone. And I'm not in the same city as most of my friends. My friends are spread out. LA, Austin. Let's see. Do I have friends in? Yeah, I still have friends in Austin. LA, Austin, Vegas. And then I just recently lost another friend. Not that he passed away or anything, just he's not my friend anymore. And it was like me not thinking, like I wasn't trying to be insensitive. I wasn't trying to be rude. I wasn't trying to be any of that stuff. I guess I just came off that way and I hadn't realized it. But what happened was he had been dating this girl, and like, you know, before I met him, he had been dating this girl, and we became really good friends because he had started doing stand-up, and this was when I was in Vegas. And he told me that she was crazy, you know, that's why they broke up, was she just turned out to be too crazy. At a point, she broke his windshield with a golf club. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty crazy, you know, because I have a high tolerance for crazy because I'm Gen X. And if you grew up Gen X, then you know, like a lot of our relationships are what would now be considered toxic, or in some cases, people would even say abusive. But for a lot of the Gen X people, it's just sort of like, yeah, that's just kind of the way relationships were in some cases. Not all, but it wasn't uncommon, you know. That's why the movies from that era are like, you know, people getting obsessed with other people. And like there's that one that was Mark Wahlberg and Reese Witherspoon. I can't remember the name of it, but that was like the secret to that movie, was he started off being cool and really romantic, and then all of a sudden he turned on her and, you know, popped her a couple of times, and, you know, that kind of stuff, and he went full on psycho. And that wasn't uncommon when I was younger. And also what's it called, being gay. Especially, you know, and I've talked about this before, and I know that some gay people would get mad at me or feel a particular way about it, but we were pretty maladjusted because we didn't have anybody to role model for us. And, you know, there weren't generations before that were able to be openly gay. And Gen X, I was one of the pioneering women of being openly gay, you know, just because I wanted to be able to be me. And so like all that stuff, it's not crazy to me, but then it's crazy, you know, when I look at it from like an actual evolved where I am now perspective. Like now I wouldn't be in a situation like that because it's just like, no, I'm not doing any of that with anybody. But yeah, so, you know, he told me that she was crazy and that she had broke his windshield with a golf club. And then not too long ago, a couple months back, we were talking on the phone. I think I had hit him up randomly just to check in and say hi. And then he told me that he had gotten back with his ex. And then I was like, which ex? And then he was describing her. And then I was like, was she the crazy one? And he was alone. So it's not like, you know, she was in the room and she heard or anything like that. And I thought we were just talking as friends. And when I say that, or when I said that, it wasn't meant to be judgmental. It wasn't like I was coming for him or coming for her or saying anything. It's just the thing that popped in my head because he had told me that. And he got very defensive, and I could tell he got angry. And we continued the conversation, and it was a decent conversation, but I could tell in that moment that it bothered him. I didn't realize how much it bothered him, but, you know, it apparently did bother him. And so, you know, he's one of those, though, that I gotta be honest, can just be gone. Like, I'm so past, and this is why I wanted to talk about my East Coast bestie, is because I don't really know what I want to do about that. Because honestly, at this big age that I'm at right now, that we're not going to get into specifics about, but at this big age, I just don't have time for people that want to have these on and off friendships with me. I've gotten old enough that either you're my friend or you're not. And if we ever have anything that we truly have to discuss, okay, but it better be an actual thing that we have to discuss and not just your thing about me, you know? And I can't even think of what that would be. But if I'm going to entertain it on any level, it better actually be something. And I told you guys, I don't know, for anybody that's not watching, I'll give isn't caught up. I'll give you a very quick version of what happened. One day I had just finished editing, and this was when I was still in Austin, and it was like 8:30 in the morning, something like that, 8:30, 9 a.m., something like that. And keep in mind, the East Coast Bestie was in New York. I think at that time, they were 2 hours ahead of us in Austin. And so, it's a little later in their day than it is in mine. And even though technically it's the end of my day, because like I said, I just finished, I had been up editing all night, which is not uncommon. And but she called, and she's my best friend. So I'm always down, unless I'm super busy, but I'm always down for like a quick chat and to catch up. And since I don't really like the phone that much, and I don't think she does either, or maybe she's just busy with her regular life, but whatever the deal is, we seem to work well together in the fact that we don't talk every day. Like when we're on a hot streak, probably once a week. If we talk twice in a week, there's probably something happening in one of our lives. But my point is, we talk the right amount for me. And so when she called at that time, I was like, yeah, I'll answer real quick, finish out my night with the chat. And she started getting mad at me about politics and, who did you, just how could you vote for him and like this kind of stuff, right? And I don't care about those conversations in the way that I can have them with you. If you want to know why I voted the way I voted and we're talking and we're friends, I'll share with you. I mean, if you're genuinely interested. But one thing that's happened to me more than once now, because I'm used to people having emotion when they speak with me. So for what I mean by that is if a person starts yelling or getting a little bit elevated, I'm not a person that's going to right away, let you know that you're not going to talk to me that way or whatever. Because if you're my friend, and this is if you're my friend, because if you're some stranger that's, coming at me sideways, I'll probably shut that down pretty quick. But if you're one of my friends, I assume that you're just getting passionate or elevated about the topic. I don't assume that's directed at me, so I'm not going to have any kind of reaction, which now I've had it happen twice, where people have been, I thought, yelling to me, and then it turned out they were yelling at me, and I didn't realize it until after it had wrapped up, where I was like, oh, was that directed at me? Like, you're mad at me? Like, okay, I hadn't considered that as one of the options to what was going on here, but now I get it, and I guess it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. But so it was one of those conversations. But with this one, because the other one, I didn't catch it until literally after. I was like, I literally had to say the words, "Oh, you're mad at me?" Like this is. And it's still one of my favorite memories, but I don't talk to that person anymore either. And me and that person were really close too. We were, really, really good friends. I looked at him as a younger brother, and, but I don't care what you have going in your life. Because, sometimes people will be like, well, sometimes you have to understand people, at this point in my life, there is no reason for anybody to be on any level abusive with me. And that's what I consider it to be when people get mad at me out of nowhere and start yelling at, especially about something so third party, like when we're talking about politics. I've always been clear about that. I don't care what the politics of my friends are. And I don't feel like they should care what my politics are because I'm not going to volunteer that in just like a regular conversation. I'm not the one that's going to all of a sudden be like, yeah, well, I voted this way. And like, you can say absolutely, if you're my friend, you can say absolutely anything you want about any of that stuff. And I'm just going to hear you out. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to give you pushback. I'm not here to question you. I mean, if I have follow-up questions just to keep the conversation going and let you know that I'm being an engaged listener, or if I'm particularly interested in what you're talking about, then I'll ask a couple of questions, but you're not going to get actual pushback from me there. It's not going to turn into a, well, that really it's blah, 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 blah. Put it here. I don't care. I'll just hear you out and be like, okay, that's the way you feel, and that's cool. I didn't get that on that one until like right at the end of the conversation. And it was another one of those moments. And I was so tired and my eyes were going buggy because when I'm doing like, especially finishing up editing, I remember I had finished editing a video that night. Not like I was working on still in my workflow, so to speak. No, I was finished editing, which usually when I'm finishing up editing, I want to get on a good streak so I can like make the video come out the way that I want it, add in whatever I've got to add in, do whatever I've got to do as far as like effects go and that kind of stuff. And so like my eyes are buggy, I'm tired, and the last thing I want is to argue with absolutely anybody. I'm a single guy. And I was single then too. And so it was just me and baby girl. She was a tiny, tiny puppy at that time. I do remember that. And it was just like, it blindsided me. But I like I said, I got it by the end of the phone call where I was like in my head, just like, oh, this is for me that I'm being yelled at right now. And so I just sent her a text message afterwards, and I'm going to paraphrase, but basically what I said in the text message, which I'm sure is pretty close to what I actually wrote down, was just like, we don't have that relationship and we're not going to have that relationship. So if that bothers you, then don't call me again. Or, so it was something like that. And she chose not to respond to that and not to call me. And I'm fine with that, and now I've been out of Austin, like total, not including when I just had my stuff there and I was here in Arizona, but total, I've been out of Austin for, I want to say it's a year and a half now, year and 4 months, something like that. And so, and we didn't talk on my last day in Austin. It was a while before that too. So, we're talking a good year and a half solid that it's been since I've spoken with her over that. And and so what happened was I was asleep the other day and I woke up to a voice message from her. And it just said something like, it was very benign. I didn't even, I think I just read it, because how iPhone will, what's it called? We'll put your voicemail into text so you can read it instead of actually hearing it. And so I read it and didn't bother listening to it. Because really, what's to talk about? Like, as far as I go, maybe at some point I'll be willing to talk again. But I really need you to understand, without me having to have a conversation with you about it, that we will never have that relationship. When we were younger, yeah, we'd get in a few arguments here and there, but now I'm just too old for it. And the truth is, it's not even about being too old for it. It really is about the fact that I know that I'm too good of a friend for that. Like, I listen to my friends talk to me about absolutely anything. I'm not judgmental. I will hear you out, and really hear you out. So I'm not going to be a punching bag when once in a while you decide that you're upset at the current administration, and because I voted for the current administration, that means that I'm going to be your pillow that you scream into. And like I said, when we were friends, if you wanted to do that and just use me as a sounding board and shout it out a little bit, I'm cool with that. But now that I know that you'll direct it at me and try to be angry with me, then I'm not open to that, because I'm not going to be that for anybody. I don't deserve to be that for anybody. And so I didn't bother returning the message. So then I get sent a text message, I think, or maybe it was a voice message. I don't know. I'm so disconnected from anything that's not, in a lot of cases, in these four walls, so to speak. I edit, I go to the gym, and then I have a few friends that I'll hang out with socially once in a while when I have time. But, my brain's been everywhere lately, and baby girl decided she didn't want to sit with me right now, but it's okay. I think she's going to get water. She's another one. That little dog, we have such a good relationship in that I really don't bust her little puppy balls about anything. She can do whatever she wants. She doesn't go potty in the apartment, and as long as that stays the way it is, I've got my job and she's got hers, and we don't. She bugs me a lot. She will decide she wants to sit with me out of nowhere or whatever, but I'm fine with that. She's the person that can bug me whenever she wants to, because I'm all she has. She doesn't have a social circle that she can hang out with outside of me, and so if she decides that she wants to get on my nerves and get on the couch again right after she had her water, then I guess that's what we're gonna do. But it's gonna cost her a kiss, and she knows that. But yeah, so and this part I do feel bad about in a way, because what the East Coast Bestie let me know on this message that I can't remember if I listened to it or read it, was that her dog had passed away. And I do have, it sounds bad, but I have more feelings for animals than I do for people in a lot of cases, because people make choices. Animals, I guess they do in their own way. Like, baby girl just decided she wanted to jump down and get water, and then she wanted to jump back up, or have me pick her back up. So you could say those were choices she made. But when it comes to, things that would possibly lead to the end of their lives, animals don't make those choices, and in a lot of cases it's the things that we've done or haven't done that sometimes end up leading to the end for them, like whether that's accidental diet type stuff, or but then they're animals, so they have shorter lifespans anyway, and so my point is, I feel bad that happened, but at the same time, I don't want to open myself up to that friendship again right now. And if eventually one day it comes back around and I feel it that way, then I'm open to that at that point. But right now, I'm not. And I can't let what anybody else is going through dictate my pace when it comes to that. And it's not at all coming from a heartless or a callous place. I wish there was a way that I could send a message and not have it come off as bitchy, because, you know, I had Derequisha had suggested that I just send a message saying something like, you know, sorry to hear about your dog, and leave it at that. But that to me sounds more bitchy than not saying anything at all, you know? To just be like, oh, sorry to hear about your dog. I mean, like, I don't know how I would translate that to text and make it sound like, you know, it's sincere, which it would be, because that part, I don't think anybody deserves that. And that's one thing that I really hope comes through in this, you know, which I don't know if she's even going to watch. You know, I don't think she watches my podcast anymore. I don't know. But what I would say, if she were listening, is that I'm not mad on any level. I don't hold hard feelings, but, and I don't, like, even if I did, even if I was mad at her, I wouldn't think that she deserves that, because I know how close we get to our pets. You know, whether you're a dog person, a cat person, a hamster person, a gerbil person, not to bring Richard Gere into this, old school rumors, but whatever you are, I don't wish your pet dying on you, you know? And so it's not like at all for me a source of any kind of joy, or she got hers now, or anything like that. Because like I said, I'm not even mad at her. Like, you know, because I like, every time that's happened to me now, I've been so shocked that I thought it was funny, you know, because I like, in that way I'm oblivious, because I don't deserve anybody to be mad at me. I think if you know that, you know, you got it coming, like somebody should check you, like you've been that bad friend that does need to hear about yourself, I think then you're kind of on your toes about it. You know, you're like, okay, I know I had that coming, you know, so I'm ready for it. But if you're not that kind of friend, I think you end up being like me, you know, where you're just like, oh, that was, you're yelling at me. Okay. All right. I hadn't known that was something we were going to do. I didn't even think that would cross your mind to yell at me, since I haven't done anything to you. I don't deserve to be yelled at. And so, you know, so I just don't want to open myself up to that. You know, like, people can have those toxic relationships outside of me. But my life is so different from that. And I don't want to welcome that in. I don't need that, you know, and I've got to admit that right now, my life is probably, to a lot of outside type people, or if somebody were to just look at it or hear about it, maybe, it might seem kind of boring. You know, it might seem like I'm just kind of a hamster on a wheel. You know, I've been trying to put out videos as much as I can, but some days I'm so caught up in doing research for the videos, and I described a little bit of that process on the latest video that I put on my main channel, you know, the way that I fact check things and stuff like that. But it really does sometimes turn into a rabbit hole, and like, the videos you guys usually see come out to 20 to 30 minutes on average. That's usually about what a video is going to be. But in a lot of cases, they start off being 45 minutes to an hour. So you're talking me editing 40 minutes to 30 to 40 minutes out of it, you know, and some of that is like when I flub something I'm saying, I've got that's one thing I want to get over soon, is being so hard on myself. But I don't get mad at myself. I just make myself do it over, like in my head. I'll be like, repeat that. And a lot of the stuff that I do, I've told you guys before, some of it I'll type out like an outline. Sometimes I'll do like almost borderline a full script. I always know I'm going to go off it though. So I'm not really a fan of this full script anymore. But for a minute there, I would do like full scripts for things. But a lot of the things I do, and to me, the best stuff I do, and also by the numbers, as far as if you're just talking about views per video, the best is always when I'm just talking off the top of my head. But just like right now, where I'm talking off the top of my head, if you were to look at this podcast, that's one of the reasons I don't edit the podcast, is because if you were to look at the podcast and not think of it, which I appreciate that a lot of you tell me that you think of the podcast as like having a conversation with me, because that's what I want it to come off as. That's what it's intended to be, is just us having a one-sided conversation. But I watch stuff that I like, that's a one-sided conversation, you could say, because obviously I'm just watching it and I'm not, able to interact with the creator because I'm watching. But I will respond to them while I'm doing my chores or whatever. Yeah, girl, I know what you're talking about. Or, I'll have conversations with the creators that I watch, and I'd imagine you guys do that too. So it's not fully a one-sided conversation. And then two, also when you guys want to jump in the comments, but my point is, if you were to look at it from that perspective, as not being a conversation with me, but from just a video, you could look at a lot of things and be like, okay, he didn't need to say that, or he repeated himself there, or, that maybe could have gone with this part of the conversation. Well, that's what editing is in a lot of cases for me. It's like being like, okay, you repeated yourself there. I'm not a perfect editor, and sometimes I think that it's necessary to repeat certain things. And so if you ever notice those things in my videos, sometimes it's like, you could say a mistake because or a decision that maybe you don't feel was the right decision. And I respect that too. It's not going to change anything, because at the end of the day, it's me doing it and I'm just doing it the best way that I can, so it's not to be resistant either. It's not like I'm going to show them and I'm going to do this exactly the way I want to do it. It's not like that. It's like, oh, I was in the moment and I thought that made the best flow. And then sometimes I will be editing and be like, okay, this part of this whole piece right here that I just said actually goes better over here at the beginning of the video, or in the middle, wherever I decide to put it, like that goes better over here. And then maybe there's something in the beginning that I said in the beginning that's like, okay, that goes better over here. And so there's that too. And so my point is, between the research and the editing, sometimes videos take me so long to put out, and I do want to get better about like not being such a like perfectionist, because I noticed there are creators that I really like that aren't they're not at all perfectionist about that kind of stuff. And they do leave in plenty of flubs, or times where they misspeak or stuff like that, and I really do enjoy them. It doesn't take away from the experience for me. But I don't know if I'm comfortable putting that kind of stuff out myself, like I said, and it's not at all judging them or whatever. I really enjoy what they do. And I don't think to myself, like, they should have cut that. I mean, once in a while I do, if I'm being honest. Once in a while I'm like, yeah, they could have done without that part. That's unnecessary. But it's rare, for the most part. I just enjoy their speaking style, and, which is like one of the funniest things I was thinking about the other day. Because, there's this idea about me right now that I'm racist, or that I'm pandering to white supremacists. There's these ideas that people have, and it's... I don't feel any insecurity about that or any need to clear that up, But I will think in my private thoughts sometimes about how ridiculous that idea is, just because, like, my two favorite creators that I watch the most of is this Bahamian gal. Her name's Rogan. I don't know if you guys ever watch her. I really enjoy her stuff. And then another one of my favorites that I like to have in the background a lot of times, and sometimes we'll end up covering similar topics, or in some cases the same topics, but our thought processes, even though we agree on a lot of things, are so different. And that would be a Black conservative perspective. That's another person, Greg, I can't remember his last name, but Greg Foreman. Greg Foreman is his name. And yeah, but if you search a Black conservative perspective on YouTube, you'll find him. And he's amazing. You know, he'll put out at least 3 videos a day. And like I said, he doesn't do a lot of editing. He's just a lot of free flow, because if you're going to put out 3 videos a day, you can't do a lot of editing. You know, you have to kind of keep it bare bones on the editing side, and really just, you know, and he's so good at what he does, which is obviously speaking, you know, public speaking. And, you know, and so it's funny to me that people have this idea, like, you know, oh, you're racist, you don't like Black people. And it's like, girl, there is no consequence to me not liking anybody or admitting that I don't like anybody. It wouldn't change a single thing in my life if I were just to be like, I do not like this person. Like I've told you guys before, when it comes to the whole LGBT thing, that was like a big thing for a minute there. Was like, he hates trans people. No, I don't hate trans people. Actually, I'm kind of protective of actual trans people. You know, that's one of the reasons that I am so clear about people like Buck Angel and Blair White, which again, another 2 of my favorite creators who I haven't been able to watch them very much lately, you know, but when I get a chance, I'm sure I'll binge them again, you know, but it's like people have these ideas that I hate people that I don't like, because I really, my life has taught me that looking at people as groups rather than individuals will always be a disappointing experience. That's what I've learned. So if you're looking at any group, like let's use my group, for example, and being Latino, you know, like if I look at Latinos as a whole and not as individuals, I don't like it. I don't like a lot of the behavior that I see. I don't like a lot of the politics that I'll see, you know, and that also has a lot to do with, I've always said that the loudest of not only any particular group, but society in general is usually going to be the dumbest. You know, it's like that saying, loud and wrong. That's a part of why that's a saying, because it really is like the people that are the loudest are usually the most wrong, the most like, because, you know, there's a lot of opinions and we're all different shades of right, you know, except for on certain things that I think we can all agree are, you know, bad things. But when it comes to, like, example, like LGBT, there are some people that think that even if you're gay or lesbian, which for plenty of people are like the safe options, you know, the non-troublemaker type options type thing. For the most part, it's just like, you know, pretty benign. You're a gay man, you're a lesbian woman. It's pretty chill, you know, like a lot of people don't have a lot of judgment about that. But there are some people that really, really are against any type of homosexuality, LGBT, any of that stuff. And so that's why I say it's like shades of right, because, you know, for some people that's wrong. And like My feelings on the whole when it comes to LGBT or gay, let's do that rather than expand it out to all the letters or whatever, because you can watch videos of me talking about that kind of stuff. But like my feelings on gay or people having feelings about gay, because some of you have suggested that I do Brad Palumbo, Brad Palumbo, which is another person that I really enjoy. I haven't been able to watch Brad lately, but I watch him occasionally. But I just have I go in spurts, that's why I get it when people are away from the channel. Like I notice some of my most hardcore viewers, sometimes I won't see them, and sometimes it's because of the amount of comments that I get on some videos, but sometimes I won't see them for a while, and then all of a sudden I'll see them pop up quite a bit, and I get the feeling that they're probably binge watching stuff and catching up. And that doesn't offend me or bother me in any way, because I do the same thing. Like I just mentioned, 3 creators that I really do enjoy that I haven't been able to watch lately: Blair White, Buck Angel, and Brad Palumbo. Haven't been able to watch any of them lately. But that doesn't mean in the next couple of weeks I won't all of a sudden sit down and binge watch one of them, and then binge watch another one, and then binge watch the other one, and it won't be all at once or whatever, but that's the way it works, and but I know that some people have commented to Brad Palumbo that he should have me on either his show, Brad versus the World, or The Normal Gays, the one that he does with Clarkson Lawson. And so Brad hit me up not too long ago, and literally I'm too busy right now, trying to get my head straight, really, which is something that I'll eventually talk about on more of a level, because I'm not going through a hard time. It's not like anything, nobody has to worry about me. It's not like, girl, I tied a noose the other night. Could you imagine if that's what it was? You know what I mean? The razors are looking awfully tempting. That's all I'm saying. Which, if you're going through a depression, I hope you laugh at that, because it's don't do it. But I'm not. So my point is, in the most insensitive way to say it, which is typical of me, I'm not having that kind of hard time right now. But my thoughts have been a bit jammed up lately, and so I really need to sort that out. And so I've been meditating. I've been going to the gym like I'm supposed to, now I need to, because I told you guys it was kind of a soft launch at first, and I really have been doing well with that, but I noticed that I really need to start paying attention to counting the calories, because I'm not making progress as quickly as I would like to, even though I'm not too far off from what I need to be doing. But that's almost like final boss type stuff, in my opinion. Like once you start actually logging the calories, because I use MyFitnessPal is the one that I use to track calories, and it really does help. But when I would want to get in shape quickly in years past, what I would do is spend ridiculous amounts of time at the gym. For me to do 2 hours of cardio in a day until I hit my goal would not be uncommon. But I don't want to go back to that, because it's, I've been able to maintain those results for quite a bit when I've done those things, but it's really hard on your body. And the older you get, the more you have to start thinking about your cartilage, because 2 hours a day of cardio is broken up. It's 1 hour of, the way it works out for me is usually 35 minutes of treadmill, and then 30 minutes of stair climber. And then I'll do that at the beginning of the workout, and then I'll do weights, and then I might leave, or I might just stay, and then after I do weights, do the other hour. And that adds up to, because it's about an hour and a half for the weights, and then there's an hour and 35 minutes, or an hour and 5 minutes that I do. Total, what it turns out to is 4 hours of being at the gym a day. And, because after I do my cardio, between cardio and weights, then I will relax in the locker room for like maybe 15 minutes or so, just catch my breath, because you sweat a lot when you're doing it like that. And like I said, I can meet a goal really quickly that way if I want to lose weight, if I'm trying to just be as lean as possible. But, it's just not, I don't want to live my life like that again, and I've done that a lot in my working out career, because I've been working out a long time, and I've done a lot of that type of stuff, and it's just not something I want to do again. And so that means I really have to watch the calories to get where I want to go in a reasonable amount of time, because I'm also kind of impatient. So there will sometimes be like where I'm like, I don't, I need to speed this up. And so, and so there's that too. But to average person, it may seem like my life is a little, repetitive right now. But to me, that's a part of discipline, and that's a part of what I need to be doing right now. I mean, like, things are going well enough for me that it's really not the time to full on take my foot off the gas, and just like coast or whatever. It is beneficial to me to continue to, not only produce stuff that, is interesting to me and I think entertaining to, the people that watch me, but also to continue to get better and more efficient. And the only way to do that is by continuing to do it, is continuing to practice, and so, I know that I'm very, very fortunate to have a fair amount of people that are willing to listen to my thoughts. And that's one thing I thought about when I was dealing with one of my neighbors not too long ago. And by dealing with, I mean just greeting, saying hi to, because I don't really talk to my neighbors. I that's by design, like there's one lady that has 3 dogs that I wave to her almost every morning. She's starting her day as I'm ending mine. And I don't know anything about her. I don't know her name. I don't want to know her name. I don't have to know her name, but she's my friend in my head. And every day when I see her, we give a quick hello, just, hey, and she seems to have the same policy I do. Not too much chit chat, just a wave, a warm hello is all we need, and we move on. But there's one particular neighbor that's a youngish girl, probably mid to late 20s, something like that. I'd be surprised if early 30s, but not completely shocked. But, a nice girl, nice looking girl, and when I say nice looking, I mean like kind of all-American girlish looking. Like, that's what I mean by nice looking, like very warm type, which maybe she's a cunt in her real life. But, like, I don't know anything about her, but, she's we don't talk though, or we don't make it a point to be chatty, but one day I saw her and we made eye contact, and then she said hi to me first, And she just seemed kind of exhausted. I've told you guys before, I'm an empath almost to a fault. That's why I don't talk to people. That's a part of why I don't talk to a lot of people, is because I can take on. I know what, like, if I'm in somebody's energy or talk to them, and you'll see that by the story. But when she said hi to me, I felt like almost like she was, and I don't mean this at all in a needy way. I'm not, it's not at all to be insulting or anything like that. But it was almost like I could tell that maybe she just wanted to feel seen for a minute. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you get so caught up in your own life and you can disappear. You can, that's one thing that I think that, as human beings, if we could maybe learn to tune into that a little bit more and not necessarily feed into truly needy and draining people, emotional vampires, but just like sensing that in, or maybe being open to being more aware of that sometimes when we see it. And I think it would help people a lot in general, if that just sometimes you knew that maybe somebody needed to, on some level, feel seen. And so she said hi to me. And so I just was like, hey, how are you? And then she was like, tired. And the way she said it was like, it was almost like she was relieved that she had somebody to tell, even if it's somebody she doesn't know, and maybe even better if it's somebody she doesn't know, because then I don't have to care. I don't have to like get in her business about it or ask her what. Sometimes it's just enough to tell somebody that much. And that's what I felt like. The way that she said tired, I felt like it was just like she needed to say that to somebody. And I was happy that I could give her that opportunity. And I chuckled when she said it, and I was like, yeah, sometimes life's like that, and it was a nice exchange, and I've seen her since. I don't even think we wave now when we see each other, but it's not at all in a bad way. And I'm not closed off to talking to her or whatever. With strangers, I'm here as much as you need me. And as long as you don't lean on me too heavily, we'll be fine. Cause I'm just not built for it with strangers in the way that because I'd be taking on a lot of people's stuff if I really was. That's what it would come down to. I was able to gather that from her. And, that was something I figured out when I was way younger, before people even used the term empath like that. I knew the term empath from a young age because there was a particular psychology class I took when I was super young, but so I know the term. I always knew the term, but people didn't use it as much as they do now. But I've always been able to pick up on what people were feeling, and some people find it to be very impressive, the level to which I can do it. Even if I'm with a friend and just passing through their house, and they introduce me to a roommate or what's it called, and I may make a quick observation just to them, never anything insulting or whatever, because these are people they live with or their family or whatever like that. So I don't say things in an insulting way, but I will mention things that I notice sometimes, just in meeting a person. Like there was one time where I mentioned that somebody seemed particularly bummed out, and then that was when I was hanging out with my friend Sable, and she was like, yeah, she was like, their partner is in jail right now, and so they're dealing with all that. And so it was like, okay, that's the heaviness that I was picking up on, but when it comes to that, because a lot of people I know think of me as being like maybe a little too disconnected, I think is something that strangers sometimes think about me. I don't think people that listen to my podcast think that, because, I think that I'm open enough in the podcast that you can tell I'm a very real person, as far as all over the spectrum real, as far as like, sometimes I am bitchy and sometimes I am disconnected and sometimes I am, sweet, and sometimes I am like very much tuned into people, and, but like whenever I notice that somebody really needs something, it's that part comes pretty easy for me. Like, I talked about it on Facebook one day, or I posted about it on Facebook, but there was this lady that walked up to me one day before I got my key fob exchanged. I was at Batteries Plus because I thought it was a problem with the battery. I didn't know that the fob had gone dead. And so I thought it was just a battery. And so I was at Batteries Plus, and I was outside smoking a cigarette, like after I got a new battery put in, or we were figuring it out. And this lady walks up to me, and she's like completely hunched over, like doubled over basically, and walking like that, walking completely doubled over and walking, like kind of back and forth. You know how she was homeless, and you know how sometimes the homeless do that, they just kind of pace back and forth or whatever. And I didn't feel at all threatened or, uncomfortable with her or whatever. It was just whatever, and she said, I wish I had the post in front of me because it was a couple months ago, and I wish I could remember her exact words, but she used words like she had just talked to her doctor, and so she was like, I went to see the doctor, just out of nowhere. She tells me as I'm smoking the cigarette, she's like, I went to see the doctor, and he said that my neck is doing much better. She said, she used the word like markedly, she was like, he said my neck is doing markedly better. Not perfect, but markedly better, and she said something like that. And the way she said it, though, was almost like she had good news, but she doesn't have anybody to talk to, or the person that she would talk to, or people that she would talk to wouldn't be around or aren't around, because it's just me and her standing here in this like public area, and like, so I just looked at her and I was like, hey, that's great. You know what I mean? Like, and I wasn't at all condescending, and it was easy for me to say and emote that way because I genuinely felt that way. Like, I genuinely was like, this woman just shared, like, for her, what's really good news. And like, why would you not have a positive reaction, even if it's a complete stranger that just drops really good news on you? There's so many people that want to drop negative on us, whether that's online or in person or whatever it is. There's so many people that have this heavy energy, and in a lot of cases have nothing to be upset about. Like, you have a nice house, you have a nice car, and you're still mad because of politics, or, which isn't to bring it back, but in a sense, kind of to bring it back. There's so much going right in your life, and you still want to be negative to people that may or may not be close with you, may or may not have ever met you. Sometimes it's just a complete stranger on Facebook that didn't like something you said, or in your comments on YouTube or X or whatever platform it may be, that these people have these feelings and just want to drop negativity on you. And whether or not you deserve that is debatable, because sometimes you'll say something and not even think about the fact that anybody's possibly going to be mad at it. And you'll put up with that. And in some cases, you kind of don't have a choice to put up with that because it's public and you can delete it if you want to, but you still saw it, So if there's a person like this particular homeless person that I saw, this homeless lady, and they're nice enough to share good news with you, even if you have no connection with that person and no connection with that news. Why should it not be easy for, maybe not you, but only speaking for me, because navigate yourselves however you want to. I know there's certain people that don't like talking to strangers at all, and I get that and I respect that. But when it comes to me, all I know is that if a stranger, no matter how stranger they are and how different they may look from me and how different their life experience may be from mine, or their life experience at that particular moment in time may be from my life at that particular moment in time, if they're willing to share good news with me and just drop that on me, then how is it hard for me to just jump in with a, hey, that's great news. I'm really glad to hear that. That's what I said. And she was like, thank you. You know, and it was like a good, nice human moment between me and a stranger. Stay unbothered.